Hello everybody! In episode 3 of Dinner to Go today we are making tomato pies, a southern favorite, and we're also going to make spinach and ricotta stuffed shells. Both of these are vegetarian recipes today and they're going to be great. They're a big seller and I'm going to teach you some tips and tricks to help keep your pie crust crunchy and help get some water out of your tomatoes. So let's take a look. I have all of my tomatoes sliced and they're lying on clean towels, draining the water out of them just a little bit. And then I have pre-baked my pie crusts. And in the bottom of my pie crust you will see a thin layer of mayo. Yes, that is a thin layer of mayo. I do the thin layer of mayo in the bottom because that oil keeps the water from the tomatoes or anything else from sogging up the pie crust. So I have baked these pie crusts at 400 for 10 minutes. And then I've put about a teaspoon of mayonnaise spread over the bottom. I am adapting my recipe from this recipe on the Southern Lady Cooks. I'm using tomatoes. I'm slicing mine. Rather than green onions, I'm using sauteed white onions, oregano, basil. And rather than bacon, for each piece of bacon it calls for, I use a teaspoon of real bacon bits, not those imitation ones. That will be disgusting. And then I use cheddar cheese. So this is on the website thesouthernladycooks.com, and you can find all of the instructions there. Now, she does not drain her tomatoes on towels, so make sure you pay attention to that step. And she does not put a little bit of mayonnaise on the bottom, and I just learned that a long time ago. That little bit of oil helps keep the tomatoes from making the crust soggy. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cook these today. Lots of my recipes are for people to cook at home, but I'm going to cook these because I don't want the tomatoes to make all the ingredients soggy. I want this to be a yummy, yummy recipe. Now my daughter is working on this recipe. It's from Fork Knife Swoon, SWOON.com. It's for the spinach and ricotta stuffed shells. They look really delicious, and I like to offer some vegetarian options from time to time. So I'm going to adapt this recipe a little as well. I added more spinach, about twice as much spinach as she has here, and I added twice as much ricotta cheese, and I'm probably going to put some more mozzarella over the top. We'll just take a look at that when it gets done to make sure that everything looks good. And we'll go through the baking instructions. Once again, that's on forkknifeswoon.com for spinach and ricotta stuffed shells. In a large bowl, we have, well, there went my spoon. We have wilted the spinach and garlic together. Wash that off for me, please. And in the microwave, we've got the ricotta, the mozzarella. We'll be adding the basil, the Parmesan cheese, and I think there was maybe salt and pepper, probably salt and pepper in that. We're just going to mix that all together because that is the stuffing for our shells. Of course, you have to boil your shells. I'm just using these jumbo shells from Walmart. You can pick up some jumbo shells somewhere, hopefully. We're going to mix this all together. We're going to stuff our shells and then I'll taste it. I usually add a little more, maybe some garlic powder, maybe some Italian seasoning. I like it to be very, very flavorful. I have 14 pies to make today. So I multiplied the bacon, the cheese that goes on top, and the mayonnaise by 14, and I mixed it all together because this is the layer that goes on top. Okay, so we are going to layer in tomatoes that have been draining. We're going to layer in cheese, and we're going to layer in onions. The first layer you need to put in is the cheese. Just like the little bit of mayonnaise on the bottom of the crust, the cheese keeps things from soaking in. So we're going to put all the cheese in the bottom of all 14 pies. It'll be about a half a cup of cheese here on the bottom. I've done this a lot, so I know what that looks like. But of course, you can get out your measuring cup and measure half a cup of cheese. I know that that'll just about cover the bottom. I see a few bald spots, and I would rather go ahead and cover those up so that the pies don't get soggy. After the cheese, we're going to sprinkle just a few onions. You can hear the shells going in the background. Sprinkle just a few onions. It'll be about a teaspoon, maybe a teaspoon and a half for each pie. We don't want it to be overwhelmingly oniony, and we want the onions to cook out when the pie is baked. So we're just going to spread them out nicely. Give it about a teaspoon or a teaspoon and a half of very, very finely chopped onion, or green onion. You can use green onion if you like. I have onions, so that's what I'm using. Now we're going to layer these beautiful homegrown tomatoes. Some are heirlooms, so they're just really, really nice.
That one looks like a piece of salami. It does.
They're all different sizes. Nobody cares. I'm going to break this one in half so I can twist it and put it in this last little space there. This is just the first layer. We're going to do it all again with tomatoes in just a minute. I'm still trying to get a little of each onto each piece of the pie. You're going to have little ones, you're going to have big ones. You can pick and choose how you can cover the space. The next thing we want to do is the oregano. I'm going to say just a good little sprinkle. It's going to be about a half a teaspoon of oregano on each of these. And then we're going to have salt and pepper, and we'll do the layers all over again. I want to caution you about shaking salt. I get way too much salt all the time. So I pour out a little handful in my palm and sprinkle it rather than try to even shake the correct amount out of a teaspoon or something, because almost always I get too much salt or too much pepper into one little spot, and that's not what I'm looking for. Now we are just going to layer it all again. I'm not going to put another layer of onions because, as I mentioned, I don't really want it oniony. We've got another half cup of cheese. I'll put another layer of tomatoes. And then I'll put the bacon cheese mixture with the mayonnaise in it on top. The mayonnaise kind of binds it together, but it really gives it that unctuous, fried quality that we love so much here in the South. People like a crispy, crunchy, unctuous pie. So that's what we're looking for, and that's what the mayonnaise will add. It's just 2 or 3 tablespoons. I went with 2 tablespoons because the pie crust already has some flakiness, and I remember I put that little bit of mayonnaise on the bottom already, so I don't want it to be overly greasy. So I went with 2 tablespoons per pie. Put a few tomatoes in there. I'm not too worried about covering it completely this time because it's already got a layer of tomatoes. And there's going to be one last beautiful layer of tomatoes on top. I grow these tomatoes. The only time I make tomato pie is when I have heirloom tomatoes and homegrown tomatoes to go into it. I would sooner die than serve a store-bought tomato, but that's just me. I'm very picky about my tomatoes. I'm not picky about a bunch of other stuff. I use jarred garlic, I use pre-shredded cheese, but if I'm going to make a tomato pie, it's going to be with homegrown tomatoes. I typically string my tomatoes up, and this year I strung them up and they fell to the ground. So ain't nobody got time for that. I have not picked them up. They have grown right on the ground alongside the cucumbers, and they have done just fine. I'll fix it all for next year, but after you have loaded tomato vines, there's no way you're going to be able to hoist those wires back up and get them where they need to be. So I just let them grow on the ground. They're producing fine. I don't see any more rot with them growing on the ground than I do with them growing up on the ties. So that's been a good decision and a time saver for sure. Lastly, we put about a half a cup of the mayonnaise cheese bacon mixture on the top of each pie. I'm just estimating based on my experience. I know what a half a cup looks like. Of course, you can get out your measuring cup and put a half a cup in, enlist a partner, or do it yourself. And then I'm going to spread that on all of those. I had a little left in the bowl, so I will wait and see how far this goes on each one. Honestly, I think that looks beautiful. I might put a few tomatoes on top of each one. That's very pretty. Anybody that needs another little spoonful will get another little spoonful. I know I've followed the recipe, so there shouldn't be any left in the bowl. I'm not cheating myself financially. So I'll come back and give everybody another little dollop once it's all spread out. And I do have some more tomatoes sliced over there, so I want to make sure everybody gets a Cherokee purple on top. If you don't live in the South, I doubt you know what a Cherokee purple tomato is, but let me tell you something. If you like tomatoes and you get a chance to eat a Cherokee purple tomato, you better be sitting down. It's going to make your knees buckle. It is fine, fine, fine. I'm going to put a Cherokee purple to the side of everybody's. Take a look at that. They are sweet and meaty, just the right of tang, just the right amount. They don't have a lot of seeds. They're just really so delicious. If I have enough, I'll put 2 Cherokee purples on every one. That is a very special tomato. They're not hard to grow, but they don't really yield a lot. So you have to grow a lot of the tomato plants. And then I have Celebrities and Early Girls. I have Homestead, Rutgers. I think that's all I planted this year. Oh, I have some German Johnsons, but they're not in yet. That's another good one. Grows really well in North Carolina. I have some with a little green tinge to them. Those will be beautiful on top. Those are also Cherokee purples. They're just not quite as ripe as the others. Every one can look different. This is a rustic pie and so delicious. Let's just spread the love just a little more. Got some tomato slices left. Just gonna fill those in where we need a little more. I like for some of the bacon and cheese to be peeking through. It makes it really pretty on top. But I don't want to leave these tomatoes. I don't really have another use for them, so I'll go ahead and put them here. I'm going to add a last little sprinkle of oregano on top. So aromatic when it starts to bake. All that oregano smells so good. It calls for basil in the recipe, but I'm not a big fan of basil with bacon. Of course, to each his own. All right, I'll pop those in the oven here in a minute. And I'll show you the finished product when they're done. Working on stuffing the shells now. We mixed up the ricotta and the spinach ahead of time. You lay that on a bed of marinara. That's a full order right there. 24 shells for 4 per person. We're going to work on these other orders. Just stuff it till it's full. It's really delicious. The ricotta is so sweet and the garlic has a real bite. This one does have basil in it, and it just goes so well with the sweet ricotta and the sweet spinach because basil is a sweet herb, and it's going to be so delicious. We are putting these on a bed of marinara sauce, and then I'm going to add a little more mozzarella cheese over the top. Maybe even a sprinkle little more Parmesan cheese over the top, just because that will make it that much better. Anything good is better covered in cheese. And we'll package these just like this with the directions on the outside, and that way the customer can bake them whenever they're ready to eat this. Oh, something's done.